happy shiny puppies. This is Melody Fletcher, author of Deliberate Receiving. Finally, the universe makes some freaking sense. And we're going to make sense of a big topic today. Global misogyny. This is not going to be an easy video, and it's definitely not going to be full of fairy dust and twinkly lights. It's a big topic, and it might get a little bit heavy. So, trigger warning. Okay. So, a few months ago, I was on this app on my phone that allows you to look at different political issues and different bills that are being proposed, and it tells you in a nonpartisan way, you know, what the passage of the bill would entail, what the consequences would be, and what the pros and the cons are, and then you have the ability to vote on the bill yourself, and then write your opinion, like why do you think, why did you vote the way that you did, you know. And I actually really was enjoying this. I've been on it for a few days. I'm just sort of voting on things, and which required me to do some research and then determine my own opinion. And so I was having a lot of fun with this. And there was a bill that you might remember that was up, which proposed defunding Planned Parenthood. And if you're not in the United States and you don't know what Planned Parenthood is, it's an organization that gives low-cost or even free health care to women, mostly low-income women, poor women, and helps them with gynecological care, birth control, prenatal care, and a small portion, very small portion of what they do is they help women with abortions. So, contentious subject. And my opinion was that we should not defund Planned Parenthood. I think it's an important organization. And they do a lot of good for a lot of women. And then the app asked me if I wanted to send this opinion to my representatives, my congressmen, and I said, oh, yeah, sure, let's do that. Off it went. And a few days later, I received a response. And I don't remember if it was one of the representatives or the senator, but I received an actual response, and it didn't even seem like a canned response, which was, you know, thoughtful and respectful, and completely disagreed with what I had said, which basically it didn't talk about any of the things that Planned Parenthood does and focused only on the abortion issue. And the stance was essentially that he would always champion the rights of the unborn children, and so therefore Planned Parenthood had to go. I didn't really have a strong reaction because, quite frankly, at the time, I felt, you know, I didn't feel a strong negative reaction. I didn't feel a strong positive reaction. It was more sort of like a, well, you know, I appreciate the response because I hadn't expected one. So it was more like, oh, somebody actually read my mail. Holy crap. And then I just kind of left it. I left it because I didn't really know what to do with that, and didn't really know what to think about that. I didn't have like I said, didn't have a strong response to it. And then over the course of the next couple of weeks, I did respond, slowly, quietly at first, but there was a reaction within me that was brewing. And after a couple of weeks, I realized that I was angry. I was very, very angry. I had been triggered, but it wasn't like a trigger, like a smack to the face. It was more like a trigger that sort of lit a small flame in me that just kept building until it was this raging fire. And what I was angry about as I sat with it, as I sat with the anger and allowed the anger, was like, look, anger. Let's explore this. And no joke, that is kind of how I see it, how I approach it, you know. I don't run away from it. I'm very happy to sit with it and face it and go, what you got to tell me, anger? And as I sat with it, I realized that what I was really angry about was a couple of different things, you know. That the rights of a potential life were more important, not as important, more important than the rights of women, and not just the right to decide over this one issue, but the right to be healthy, the right to govern her own body, you know, basically all rights of women to be autonomous. And so what came out of this belief system that I was bumping up against, was that women really only have two purposes. And one of them is to please men, and by definition to not displease them, you know, God help us. And the other reason was to be walking uteruses, just to have men's children, to reproduce. And those were our purposes, and we should just fulfill those purposes and be quiet. And that anything that steps outside of those purposes should be squashed. You know, it's sort of ridiculous. What are you thinking? And so I'm trying to connect with what I was feeling at the time, because I've moved on now, but it was there. And I was really, really, really mad, really, really, really angry. And, you know, it has to be said that at this point in my life, I no longer experience that belief system in my own life. I have in the past. It is definitely part of my history. I have, you know, I have demonstrated that powerlessness in my own life. I have certainly hit that glass ceiling hard a few times. I have been dismissed because I was a woman, told to sit down and be quiet. My opinion, you know, was dismissed, and then a man would get up and say the exact same thing, and then that was accepted. I have felt unsafe, physically unsafe, because I'm a woman, and in one incident, particularly harrowing incident in my life, I performed sexual acts with somebody in order to keep myself from being raped. So these incidents are all in my history. They're all part of my life. And each one of these incidents was a manifestation for me. I didn't know that at the time, but it was a manifestation for me. A manifestation of an aspect of myself that was feeling powerless. And when I stopped blaming myself for all of these things, I was able to take responsibility for my vibration, for my energy, for my own belief system. And I started to heal those aspects within myself. And bit by bit by bit, as I stepped further and further into my power, those kinds of manifestations just went away, went away, went away. So I have not had incidents like that in my actual personal reality in a long, long time. But I am aware that those incidents are still taking place out there in the world at large. That is still part of my reality, my greater reality. And because it's still part of my reality, there's still something within me that needs healing. It's always a reflection of the self. Whatever's in your reality, what you're aware of, is part of your energy. And so, even though it wasn't part of my energy anymore, I still had to allow this anger to come up. This was much bigger than me. It was sort of the global view of how women are treated, and all these thoughts came in, and news reports of how, you know, that I'd heard over time of how women are treated in different countries, and all that powerlessness on display. And I had to allow myself to be angry, really, really angry, illogically, unfairly angry. And even though I know tons of beautiful men now who are, you know, champions of women's rights, I would never step on a woman's right, because that's who's in my reality, I still had to allow myself to be really, really angry and to rage against this. And it took a couple of weeks. Now, it wasn't 24/7. I wasn't, you know, constantly, I'm gonna have a job to do. But pretty much every day, I would sit with this for a while, and I would allow myself to feel this fire, this burning, this rage. And I was reaching for a different perspective. I was reaching for clarity. I was reaching for an understanding. And yet, I wasn't doing it, you know, I was reaching for it, but my main priority was to allow myself to feel this energy. And I knew that it would lead to clarity if I allowed myself to have the experience, because that's how it happens. You have the clarity after you have the experience. And eventually clarity did come. Whew. So for me, what it's about is powerlessness and two sides of the same coin. You know, when you have a victim and a victimizer, both of them are coming from a different place of power. They're coming from a place of powerlessness, but they're manifesting it in vastly different ways, complementary ways, one might even say. And also remember, and I've taught this often, there's no such thing as a win-lose. So you've either got to win-win or you've got to lose-lose. And in a situation such as this, we're both losing. Men and women are both losing. And we're both coming from a place of powerlessness. Now, we women, and keeping in mind that I'm not talking about all women, and that, you know, we're talking about two different sides. So I'm going to use, for simplicity's sake, women and men, because there is, you know, a predominant embodiment by women of this energy, a predominant embodiment by men of the other energy, but the other side of that energy. But a woman can embody sort of the male side, and a man can embody the woman's side, and you have the ability at any point as an individual to step out of this, and many people have. But as a form of explanation, let's keep it simple. So women are often aware that they feel powerless. They're sort of on the extreme. If a pendulum swings from extreme to extreme, they're on the extreme of the doormat side, the going into prison, going into the fetal position, you know, keeping themselves safe, trying to protect. Whereas the men on the other side, at the other extreme of the pendulum, are on sort of the rage warrior side a lot more. So their powerlessness is causing them to try to control. And it does feel a little bit more powerful, a little bit more empowering than the doormat side, but both are coming from the same place. The problem is that in our powerlessness, we cater to their powerlessness. And by the way, this doesn't just apply to men and women. This is whenever you have two sides of powerlessness, this applies. And so when we accept explanations for why these types of men who oppress women, it's not all men, but these types of men who oppress women behave the way that they do, when we accept explanations for it, excuses for it, we are catering to their powerlessness. We are not expecting better of them. We are not seeing them in their power. And it can get to the point where you do start to kind of think, maybe it's all men. And maybe it's all women. And you can manifest evidence of that in your reality. So when a man sexually assaults a woman, and we accept any kind of explanation that says, you know, well, she shouldn't have been wearing that, or she shouldn't have been drinking, or she shouldn't have been walking in that neighborhood. What we're really saying there is that men are rabid animal creatures who cannot be trusted to even walk down the street without harming someone. They can't control themselves at all. And if that is really true, if that is what we truly, really believe, then we should lock all men away and put them on some island, ship them away on some island, and, you know, keep society safe. But that's not actually true. Men are not rabid animals who can control themselves. And it's doing a huge disservice to men to see them as though they are. And I think men should fight against that stereotype as well. When we accept men, and we accept the idea of men, that this is how men are, yeah? That they are Neanderthals, that they are not very bright, that they just think of women as, you know, pieces of property. When we accept that idea, we are catering to the lowest common denominator. We are catering to the absolute powerlessness, which acts that way, instead of looking at the power in men. Because when men step into their true power, They have no need to do any of that. And when women step into their true power, they have no need to cater to any of that in any way, shape, or form, or to even rail against it, although railing against it is certainly better than being a doormat. The idea is the pendulum swings from doormat, that's the extreme, to rage warrior, that's the other extreme. And the place of power is actually right in the middle. I did a TED talk about that concept. If you want to look it up, it's on my YouTube channel. It's on my blog. And so in the place of power, we see each other's power as well. We no longer apologize for our opinions. We no longer feel that we need permission to have the right to do anything. We respect each other. You know, the energy that likes to control from a place of powerlessness feels like it's on a tiny little pedestal, defending itself, because if anybody gets up on that pedestal, you're going to get pushed off. And so you can't allow anybody else to get on even a little bit, because it means something is being taken away from you. This is a really powerless, scarce mindset. In power, you understand that there's abundance. In power, you understand that you lose nothing when someone else gains. In fact, if you're looking for the win-win, you want others to win. Yeah? So this issue of misogyny is actually one of imbalance on both sides. And the way we solve this, if I can postulate anything here at all, I'm not going to try to say I'm going to solve all the world's problems with a YouTube video, but the way that we can really solve this in a big general way is to make that side of it irrelevant, to step into our own power as women. And men, make the powerlessness of women irrelevant and step into your own power, which means that stop blaming women for taking your power away, or stop thinking that they can take your power away. And these might be beliefs that you don't even know that you have, that could be ingrained in there. See, you know, if my words are triggering you right now, that's something you gotta take a look at. So we each have to kind of make the other side irrelevant and step into our own power. And then as we step into our own power, we can meet each other, not on the battlefield, but in the meadow, under the sunlight, with the flowers and a buffet of food and great music and fantastic conversation, and as equals. Nobody is trying to take anything away from anybody. And nobody truly wants to oppress anybody. It's just a whole lot of fear and a whole lot of powerlessness being expressed in two opposite ways. And I truly believe that we are well on our way to stepping into our power. All of us. A lot of what you see now, all of these issues coming up right now, is just us railing against in the angry phase. Like, I had to be angry for a while. In the angry phase, this is not right, this is not right. But the more we can stay away from blame and step into responsibility, the faster we get the clarity, the faster we step further into our power. So that's what I've got to say about that. Tomorrow's video will be lighter. So what I want to know from you now is, what do you think? What's your stance? If I've triggered you, you can express that respectfully. If you have been triggered by misogyny in particular, you can express that here as well. And if you've reached a new perspective, perhaps with this video, if there was an aha moment, or you reached it in some other way, and you've come to a point where it all sort of released for you, as it did for me, because my anger dissipated as soon as I had sort of my big aha moment, which I did my best to describe here. Yeah. If you've had that, then please share that in the comments as well. And until tomorrow, you guys, thank you for bringing your light to the world. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.